Production funding is provided by A. Reddix and Associates, Health Information Resource Center, offering short-term training for long-term professional careers in medical coding. HIRCVA.net.
Discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. There are 6,354 children under the age of 21 who are in Virginia's foster care system. They are fairly evenly split racially and by gender. These are children who have been removed from their homes, ideally for a brief time, until the biological parents can take on the responsibility of raising their children again. Now, it takes very special people to open their hearts and their homes to these children in need. They are called foster parents. And here to talk about why you may want to get involved is Ruth McCall-Miller, foster care supervisor with the Norfolk Department of Human Services, Leon Williams, a foster parent, and Erica Brown-Meredith, Director of Community Living Programs with the Barry Robinson Center. Welcome to Another View, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it. Let me start by, let's set the stage in terms of how a child finds him or herself in foster care, Ruth.
Well, you have several situations that can occur. Sometimes it's merely because of a death of a parent. With the influx of drugs in the society now, a lot of it is because of that. Physical violence, mental health issues, and sometimes parents just cannot care for their kids, and we may get a call, an investigation is done. Now, the last thing we want to do is bring kids into care.
So you try to find any other way possible.
Absolutely.
First.
We look for family, we look for neighbors, you know, what you call kin, fictive kin, doesn't have to be blood relative, but someone that has some familiarity with the child, and we try to place them. The last option is, you know, to bring them into foster care, but for the safety issues, you know, sometimes that's what we have to do.
And they have to go through a court procedure. Is that right? In order to be placed in a foster home?
Not from the beginning.
Oh,
not from the beginning.
Okay.
We have legal paperwork that says that we can take custody of the children, and then there's a 5-day hearing, and the kids go to the 5-day hearing. The parents at that time may have other family members who have come up. You know, they may have contacted them out of town and come up, and then hopefully we can get them back home at that time. But sometimes that's not an option.
But Erica, the overall goal is always to keep the child or to get the child back home. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right, because the optimal solution to families is for a child to thrive in their own natural environment. They do better in terms of their natural environment. So the goal really, social services, is to provide those services to that natural family to prevent them from coming in the foster care system.
Now, you're with the Barry Robinson Center, so you handle kids that have more emotional issues, is that, and maybe physical?
Absolutely. They still come through the foster care system through social services, as Mrs. Miller alluded to. But what ends up happening is those children that cannot be maintained in a regular foster care setting, they come to our agency because we provide therapeutic foster care service at the Barry Robinson Center. So what ends up happening is these children have cognitive delays, severe emotional problems, or behavior problems, and what we do is we train our foster parents to actually work with these children in conjunction with the family and also with social services. So the goal is always reunification.
How difficult is it to find a foster parent? And Leon, I haven't forgotten about you. I'm coming to you in just a second. But I want to ask you first, how difficult is it to find foster parents, people who are willing to take these kids on for a short amount of time?
We can always find foster parents. It's those specialty parents. You know, sometimes you need sibling groups. You have 3, 4, 5 kids, you know, not every parent is willing to take in 3 or 4 or 5 kids at a time. But we have different recruitment efforts, and there's always someone who says, you know, I can do that. I can open up my heart, I can open up my home, I have some time, you know, I want to help this child, I want to help this situation.
And we're going to talk about the process to become a foster parent in just a minute. But Leon, I have to look at, you're a foster father. Now, you're married, right?
Yes.
Okay, but what made you decide, because I understand you were the catalyst behind your family becoming a foster family, made you decide to take this step?
Well, me and my wife, we wanted another child, but we were not able to have one. And when we looked into foster parenting, we actually looked at the foster parenting and actually looked at the adoption process. And as a result, we just stuck with it. We have a love for children. We do have 2 of our own, but there was one more that we wanted, but unfortunately we weren't able to have him. But since we've been foster parents, it's been one of the most rewarding things that's happened in our lives. I think we get more out of them than we could ever give back to them.
How many kids have you fostered?
Roughly, I think it was a little over 20.
20. And how long have you been doing it?
6 years.
Wow.
For 6 years. That's just outstanding.
Yeah.
I wonder, because the first thing that comes to my mind is when you bring in a child, especially if it's a little kid, but any child, that you really have to make them a part of your family, don't you?
Of course. Me and my wife, we have this philosophy, and our philosophy is this. Once that child has hit that door, we don't treat them like a stranger, but we treat them like family. Right. Our role as foster parents is to be a support system for that child. And me and my wife are full of love, and we like to display that love towards those children that come into our home. They have the same rights and privileges as our biological children have. We don't treat them any different, and they see that once they come in.
But when they have to go back home, how do you deal with that? I would think that that would probably be the most difficult part of being a foster parent, because you can't help but become attached.
It is one of the most difficult situations that we might come across, but we have to keep in mind that we're there for the child. And as we're taught, and as we were taught in pride training, that the goal is always what's best for the child. And sometimes that means putting our feelings aside so that the child may succeed. I've actually experienced that myself. We had a sibling group that were in our home for about 2 years, and reunification time came to be with their relatives. It was very hard for us. It was hard for the child, the children, excuse me. But the end result was we knew we had to do what's best for that sibling group. Me and my wife, we talked to both of them, helped them understand that we weren't leaving from their life. We are still an extension of their life. And until this day, they still call us on a regular basis. They come by and visit for a weekend or whatever, come raid the refrigerator. So their life is going on, and they're happy. And that's what you want. You want that child to be happy. You want that child to be at peace.
Right.
Ruth,
Yes.
the nuts and bolts of, or I guess the question I want to ask is, if you're considering becoming a foster parent, what are some of the questions you need to ask yourself before you actually embark on the process? And we'll talk about the process, but what do you need to search internally for?
First, you need to ask yourself, is this about you? This is a little bit about what he spoke of. Or are you going to be a help to children? Because a lot of people have some empty nest syndrome, and oh, I need to have a kid, or I just want them around, and it's really not about, I want to be of service to this child and this family. So you need to first ask, am I doing this out of some sort of self-rewarding thing, or am I doing this because I want to fill a void for children and family at the time? And then you have to make sure that you're financially stable, because we're not paying a lot of money, and kids are very expensive. And so, to make sure that you're financially stable. And I think that the question that I tell folk who are interested, are you willing to let go? Because we do a whole piece on separation and loss, but they always think that it's the separation and loss of the child experiences, and they never turn it inward and say, am I going to be able to do this? And most folk in the beginning say, oh, it's not going to be a problem. I can handle this. I raised my own children, or we have people who present themselves who have gone through some tragedies themselves and say, I want to help kids who may have experienced something that I've experienced in my life. And I said, are you ready for it?
Yeah.
And
you train foster parents, do you not?
That's correct.
So when you're talking with them, what are some of the things that you ask them to consider as they're going forward?
One of the things that I ask them to consider is, why are you doing it? Because the ultimate reason why you should be doing it should be for the child, not because of yourself. It should not be all focused on you, but the majority of the focus should be on the child. When I'm doing training, I'm actually giving life excerpts from myself and my wife of some of our experiences, some of the difficulties, and a lot of the joys, because there are more joys than there are difficulties. Like I said, they give to us more than we can ever give back to them. So that's a reward to us in the soul.
Let's talk about some of the nuts and bolts. And Erica, I'm going to ask you about this. Do you place kids with same sex, same racial makeup of families? Does it matter? You know, in other words, can you put a white child with an African-American family or vice versa? Or do you try to keep it as homogenous as possible?
Well, that's a good question. We try to actually look at the ethnic makeup of that particular child in terms of placement, because even though they're in an alternative family setting, the fact of the matter is that whatever we can model that looks like their own home environment is more appropriate for that child and also helps with the transition. So therefore, in saying that, we normally look in terms of placing African American children with African American families. One of the problems that we run into, and I guess Ms. Miller could allude to that as well, is that there is not a lot of Caucasian families who foster therapeutic foster care children, or in terms of the regular foster care realm as well.
Really?
Really. And I would attest that because of that, what ends up happening is sometimes we do place Caucasian children in African American families, but we interview that child and make sure it's appropriate. We also make certain that it does not interfere with any of their own belief systems or their values in that family, because it can be a difficult transition for the child, and also very difficult for them to kind of maneuver through that system when it's time for them to go home for visitation, or when the family is trying to buy into the treatment plan for the services for that child. So we look at all aspects, and I would attest that by history, African American families has always been one that of multi-generations. We've always taken in our own as well. Even stemming back from in terms of slavery and things of that nature as well. We've always had kinship networking systems as well. So it's innate in the African American community to go out and to assist and to reach out to others who are in need. So I just think that's part of our makeup, and it's just part of in terms of what makes it such a wonderful race in that regard.
Ruth, what about when you bring a child in? I talked about this subject on our sister station, WHRV, when I was on Hearsay a couple of weeks ago, and a woman called in and said that she spanks and was wondering if she could be considered as a foster parent. What about things like spanking? And
there is no corporal punishment. There will be no spanking.
Okay.
There will be, and that was something I said earlier about folk who say, you know, well, I raised my kids and I raised my grandchildren. It's not going to be a problem. I'll treat them just like, you know, I treated my children. But there will be no spanking. You know, and one of the things that after you tell parents things like, this child has gone through enough spanking, enough violence in their lives, you know, it will traumatize them further. So they have to sign what's called a corporal punishment statement, saying that they will not use any type of corporal punishment at all.
In the training, do you train parents on other ways to discipline?
Absolutely. That's part of the training process. It's the same process that social services uses with their training for their foster families as well. It's also part of the ongoing training process. In addition to that, when we actually staff families' cases, because it's a collaborative effort, it's a multidisciplinary team approach, and when we go to staff these cases and we see there's problems with the child being able to adapt to that new environment, especially in a therapeutic realm in which I work, then we sit down and we talk to that particular family about other means of actually deterring that child's maladaptive behaviors. And that could mean in terms of clinical services, that could also mean in terms of psychological support for that child, that could mean in terms of some in-home services, things of that nature. So just because the child has behavior or emotional problems, that should not be a deterrent for someone wanting to be a foster parent, because social services is truly invested, as well as the agency, like in terms of our agency, the Barry Robinson Center, in providing those services to support that child with the goal of always family reunification.
Okay. What about like religion? In other words, can you take the child to church? Can you put them in that type of environment. I'm just trying to think of some things that maybe the biological family may have done or may not have done, and how far can you go?
Well, during the training, what we tell our parents, we talk about connections. And it's very important that a child keeps his or her connections. And just because the biological parent does not have physical custody, they still have custody of their child, and they should be consulted on certain things. And if a child is of a particular faith, we should try to continue that strand of faith. And what we tell our foster parents is, you know, hook up with somebody else in the class. You may be of a different religion, but, you know, he may attend the church of this child's, you know, particular faith, and you can get him to take the child. You know, you should not force your religion. And then if children don't want to go to any type of religious services, they have the right to say that I don't want to go.
Now, so there is still contact then between the foster parent and the biological parent? Do you talk directly to them, Leon?
It depends. It's from case to case. The particular family I was talking about, referring to, yes, we do have communication. We have correspondence. We talk all the time on a regular basis, and we talk with the children. We talk to the relatives that are involved.
So if the biological parent wants to come visit, can they just come?
Well, the thing is,
no, go ahead. Go ahead. You can start.
No, but the thing is that social service clearly dictates in terms of how that contact is going to be initiated with that family. So they actually let the agency know and the foster parent know in terms of what it is that they expect in regards to visitation. Now, if the goal is reunification, there has to be some type of contact. And if foster families don't want to have that contact with the bio family, then they're really in the wrong business in terms of providing foster care services. Because the goal is reunification, and they have to have contact. Now, the contact is initiated in terms of, it could be face-to-face, it could be weekend visits, supervised contact that's with the agency, or it could be on the outside. But we try to work with the family and with that foster family and ensuring that the children's needs are met. He alluded to it earlier, it's all about the children, and so the goal is always being child-centered in any approach and practice that we provide.
And I was just going to add that within our training, we tell our parents this is an expectation.
Absolutely.
Because if you have a relationship between the biological parent and the foster parent, and both of those parents come together for the best interest of the child, it's going to make for a much better interaction, and it's going to help the child in the placement. You know, you don't know everything about this child that just came into your home. What better way to pick the phone up and say, Mom, you know, I noticed that he does this, or he has, and then Mom can explain it and tell you, you know, well, he was always scared of the dark. I always kept a little night light on for him. And it makes it, you know, for a much better relationship with the children and the foster family, and the foster family and the biological family.
Leo, do you find a difference in if you bring in a child who is, say, preteen or younger versus a teenager? Have you fostered all ages?
Pretty much, yes.
Pretty much, yes.
And there are some differences when you start dealing with your preteens and your teens. They are more challenging.
They're challenging for the biological parent
as well.
And the agents provide the service.
I guess me and my wife, we love a challenge. So, because we've fostered quite a few teens. The difference with preteens and teens are that preteens and teens, they have developed their personalities. They know what they want. They perceive things in a specific likeness, per se, and trying to get them to understand that it's okay for you to have your opinion, it's okay for you to have your voice, but to voice your opinion and your ideas positively. That's usually the goal. That's usually the I guess the struggle over the fence there.
So as a foster parent then, and you have this teenager and he wants the $200, $500 Air Jordans or whatever the latest tennis shoe is. I mean, are you are you obligated to do that, or how? I mean, I'm trying to figure out how this whole thing works.
Is that a trick question?
No, not a trick question, but I would imagine that would be, especially for a teenager, if they want to still kind of keep up with their peers and still fit in.
You negotiate.
Yeah, the agency
Yes,
does.
definitely.
Yeah, it is a lot of negotiation, but the agency does pay a per diem, and the kids have a clothing allowance. The $200 Jordans or whatever they are is going to have to come out of working hard, getting an after-school job, doing some chores around the house, because we're not going to, the same way you would with your kid. You know, how do we work this out? I'm not going to put $200 down on the table, but you know, what can you do, and maybe we can work this out.
Now, sometimes kids aren't able to go back home, and they wind up becoming adopted.
Right.
And we have a video. We want to show you some pictures of some families that have gone, where the child has gone into the adoptive process. Let's take a look at that.
Okay.
Boy, it's all about love, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It does really. What, Leon, you thinking about adopting?
Yes, I am. Me and my wife.
Oh, we're not forgetting about your wife.
You're right.
I just want her to know in case when she sees it, so she'll know. Yeah, it's a team effort. But yes, we're definitely looking at adopting. That has never left us. I don't think it ever will until that actual day comes. Right now, we are enjoying the beauty of giving, because if we as a people learn to love one another and appreciate one another, it'll be a much better world. And that's what we like to share and display to all of our children, to love and to appreciate, because it's important, especially when you look at the news nowadays and you see how things are going on in the world. The respect and that love module is not in society as it once was.
We got less than 2 minutes, but I want to hear from each of you in terms of what would you tell people today who are watching this show, who are thinking about becoming a foster parent. I'm going to start with you.
What I would like for them to know is that we need them. Children out there need them. They need a safe home. They need parents who care about them, and they need someone who's willing to stick it out. I always say that, you know, be in it to win it. Look behind the behaviors of the child and find out what the needs are.
Okay, Leon, what would you tell them?
That if you give of yourself, the rewards that come back to you are more than what you can imagine. And that's simply put.
Okay. And Eric?
And what I would say is that we definitely need foster parents in the therapeutic realm because of the magnitude of the behavior and emotional condition of the children that we service. And it's a team process. You're not in there by yourself. You have support from our agency, from social services, from outside vendors in terms of community support. So you can do it. It's just a matter of just making that phone call and just putting your foot forward.
And speaking of making that phone call, if you're interested for foster care parenting, you can go to norfolk.gov/human services or call 664-6079. Or for the Barry Robinson Center, it's barryrobinson.org, and that number is 461-8926. Make that phone call. They'll walk you through the process. And in the last seconds that we have left, you are also an adoptive parent.
Yes, I am.
But you did not go through the foster system, did you?
No, because I couldn't give them back. As soon as they walked through the door, they were mine immediately.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And we'll be right back after this look at what's happening in Hampton Roads. Many of you have asked me, where's Lisa Godley? Which makes us smile because it means that you are missing the positive stories that we feature here on Another View. Well, Lisa is working on a documentary called Code Switching, which examines the ability to switch from street language to standard English, particularly in the workplace. The documentary will air on September 27th, and we'll have more information for you really soon. Thanks for joining us this evening. Next week on Another View, a conversation with civil rights pioneer Senator Harry Marsh. We'll see you next time for Another View.
Production funding is provided by A. Reddix and Associates, Health Information Resource Center, offering short-term training for long-term professional careers in medical coding. HIRCVA.net.